Kaufman writing in the Wall Street Journal. For Justin Trudeau, emergency powers are too often a policy of first resort. In March 2020, at the start of the pandemic, the Canadian Prime Minister sought arbitrary power to tax, spend and borrow for 21 months. He had already negotiated a COVID relief package with the opposition, but he wanted a blank cheque. Now, as the pandemic seems to wind down, he's returned to the well. He thinks everything's an emergency. Ah! Emergency! Emergency! I've run out of hairspray! Emergency! Mr. Trudeau invoked the Emergencies Act on Monday for the first time in Canadian history. They've got all this way without an emergency. The law's predecessor, the War Measures Act, was only used 3 times. World War I, World War II, the 1970 FLQ crisis involving Quebecy terrorists. Now, in response to protests and blockades started by the truckers against vaccine mandates, the Prime Minister has granted his government extraordinary temporary powers to make orders or regulations that are believed on reasonable grounds to be necessary to respond to the issues at hand. That's how the government explains it on its website. Obviously, you will have already picked up, being an astute, discerning viewer of news and someone who is a philologist, a lover of language, someone who studies words, that is vague language that could be used for anything. Emergency! Emergency! What's the emergency? I can't do what I like whenever I want to and bang people up and nick their bank accounts and freeze their money and prevent people having a conversation. Again, as I always tell you, I have no view on vaccines or vaccine mandates, but what I do believe is that you should have open conversations and that you will never advantage society as a whole to enter into sensorial spaces of condemnation and judgment where people in positions of power, whether that's industrial corporate power or governmental power, start closing down and limiting the power of other groups. My personal opinion on the truckers, as long as they remain non-violent and do not express or overtly become racist or in any way unpleasant, you know, I'm about love in the heart. Love in the heart. You know what's in your heart, don't you? You know whether when you're saying something you want to hurt somebody. And I'm saying that if them truckers are doing what they say they're doing, then 90% of them are vaccinated anyway, so take that off the table. They're just saying, we just want some bloody freedom. We were heroes a minute ago, and they're like ordinary working Canadian people. We just want to be able to express ourselves. I agree with their right to do that. This broad authority doesn't junk the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. It does, however, include the power to prohibit travel, public assemblies and the use of any specified property, to force people or companies to render essential services, to impose fines and imprisonment for violating any of the emergency rules, and to use the military as police. If you go back and look at people 5-10 years ago, like people that were considered to be on the edgelands of crazy, they were saying this was going to happen. What I dislike is the kind of rationalisation and minimisation of events that are actually quite radical. The sort of